Story from Newsweek. Russia issues a warning. World War III. A World War III warning to the U.S. You know why they're doing it? How about this? Ukraine says it struck at 2 oil depots inside Russia. So using Western weapons, Western training, Western resources, Western intelligence, and Western volunteers, they call them volunteers. That means U.S. boots on the ground. There has been an invasion of Russia. Russia has threatened to use nuclear weapons if facing an existential threat. But perhaps they need not blow us up. From Watcher.guru. BRICS, 126 nations meet with alliance to discuss ditching the U.S. dollar. My friends, the deep state will not allow that to happen. The liberal economic order will not allow that to happen. So perhaps Russia will say, we don't need nukes. We're getting off the petrodollar and you are done. And what do you think the response from the United States is going to be? It's going to be war. Our only hope, in my opinion, is a Donald Trump victory. Trump wins, secures the United States, protects it, and then pushes for security in this country and lets these other countries trade as they see fit. It could lead to global conflict and competition, but it'll avoid nuclear annihilation. First, from Newsweek. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov issued a World War III warning to the U.S., saying the West was asking for trouble by even considering Ukrainian requests to use supplied weapons to conduct strikes deep within Russian territory. Discussions about using Western-supplied missiles to strike Russia are tantamount to playing with fire, Lavrov told reporters in Moscow on Tuesday. The U.S., despite requests from Ukraine, has remained steadfast on its position that its long-range weapons may only be used on Ukrainian soil or to defend the country from Russia cross-border attacks. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly asked Western allies to approve the use of their weapons to strike targets inside Russia, insisting that doing so could turn the tide of war. Lavrov warned that the West against entertaining Kiev's request. Quote, we have long been hearing these speculations about allowing the use of not only Storm Shadow, but also American long-range missiles, by the way. Some anonymous source in Washington said that such work is being done. Ukraine's request is being viewed in a generally positive light. I'd like to add, they've already used U.S. weapons to strike Russian territory. This is blackmail. This is an attempt to pretend that the West wants to avoid excessive escalation. But in reality, this is deceit. The West does not want to avoid escalation. The West is asking for it. And it seems to me that this is already obvious to everyone. We are now confirming once again that playing with fire, that playing with fire, and they are like small children playing with matches, is a very dangerous thing for grown-up uncles and aunts who are entrusted with nuclear weapons in one or another Western country. He added, Americans unequivocally associate conversations about the Third World War as something that, God forbid, if happens, will affect Europe exclusively. Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Patrick Ryder told reporters during a news conference on Tuesday, that Washington's policies on Ukraine's use of American-supplied missiles has not changed. You've heard us say that Ukrainians can use U.S. security assistance to defend themselves from cross-border attacks. In other words, counterfire. But as it relates to long-range strikes, deep strikes into Russia, our policy has not changed. We're not seeking conflict with Russia. We are simply supporting a democratic nation who was invaded 2.5 years ago and enabling them to protect themselves. I'm going to go ahead and say lies, but anyway. Look at what's happening to Ukraine. They're surging into Russia. You're going to have World War III. This is Donald Trump speaking Tuesday about the invasion in Detroit. Responding to Trump's remarks, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said many Western countries are already up to their ears in this conflict. To put it simply, they are directly involved in this conflict. Such forays like the one in Kursk Oblast are, of course, acts that escalate tension to the limit. Therefore, there is cause for concern. And in this case, one can treat such alarmist statement with understanding. There are no winners in nuclear war, only survivors. Ukraine says it struck at 2 oil depots inside Russia. Why are we tolerating this? Democrat voters who are supporting this are either abject, malicious evil or the banality of evil. I will say it again. Ukraine has invaded Russia. They've evacuated 130,000 civilians. They are bombing oil depots. I do not like Russia. I do not like Ukraine. Let them have their war. I don't care. Russia should not have invaded Ukraine. The U.S. should not have tried to interfere in Ukraine and tried to induct them into NATO. There is no innocence here, only escalation. And the people in this country that are supporting the Ukraine flag-waving Democrat psychopaths and neocons are going to destroy this planet. They're going to destroy this country, and they are going to wipe out large portions of humanity. They need to stop. I don't know that Donald Trump averts the crisis. I can certainly tell you that it's the better option, and heaven help us. Russia at any moment could begin using nuclear artillery or tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine to stop the incursion into Kursk. I'm hoping they don't. I got a few hopes. One is that Russia is just pathetic and cowardly and just gives up. It's all over. They get invaded and they just cry and whine about it. Not that I like what's happening with the war and the conflict on either side. The point is, whatever ends the war, maybe Donald Trump gets elected, tells Ukraine it's over, and Russia and Ukraine stop. But so long as Democrats are in power, they are going to exacerbate this problem. Russia will eventually retaliate. There's no reality where Russia sits back and says, ladies and gentlemen, we've lost. Pack it in, boys. We're fleeing, heading east. No way. There's no reality in which Ukraine continues the incursion and Russia just says, guess we lose an oblast. Basically like a state. No, if it comes down to the point of true desperation, Putin says, low yield nuclear artillery, flatten them, send a message. Low yield nuclear artillery. This means they're launching them from ground-based artillery, firing weapons with a large blast radius, but not quite near what we're going to see with ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles. And that begins, my friends, the nuclear escalation. Heaven help us if Russia actually feels like Moscow would fall, if we ever get to that point. Because then it's ICBMs. Europe will be a pancake. I hope it doesn't go there. A lot of people have optimism bias and normalcy bias. They don't believe it's possible. They think that it'll never happen. Putin will never use these weapons. You do not get to go on the media every day and say Putin is a despot, psychopath, tyrant, and then try and tell me the man will not use nuclear weapons. Pick one, because it can't be both. Either he is a psychopathic tyrant who will do anything to stay in power, or he's a pathetic, spineless coward. Which one? If he is the despot you claim him to be, he will absolutely say, I will not give up power, and you will not pry it unless you do for my cold, dead hands. Vladimir Putin, to me, comes off as a person who would absolutely use nuclear weapons. We may get there by other means. 126 nations meet with alliance, the BRICS nations. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Around 126 nations will attend a BRICS municipal conference, all showing interest in joining the bloc and ditching the US dollar. The queue to join BRICS is getting longer. The developing countries are expressing their interest in joining the alliance. The BRICS countries, Sixth International Municipal Forum, IMF, that's funny how they're calling it IMF, will take place in Moscow between August 27th and 28th, which was already long past. Mostly developing countries hailing from Asia, Africa, South America, and Eastern Europe shared initial interest in joining the bloc. The newfound ambition is to strengthen their local currencies and not be dependent on the US dollar for trade, as they have been for some time. The event will include more than 70 business events and a large-scale exhibition showcasing the annual international exhibitions, Digitech, and mechanical engineering strategies and technologies. Almost half of the world shows interest in joining the BRICS and dethroning the US dollar. That's the end, man. Let me break it down for you. What is the U.S. economy based on? It's called the petrodollar. If you want to buy oil, you use U.S. dollars. We had an alliance, an agreement with Saudi Arabia. I should say we had an agreement with them on the petrodollar deal where they would only accept dollars for oil for 50 years. That deal ended. They're now trading in other currencies. We forced other countries, literally forced, to use the U.S. dollar to buy oil. So if you are, let's call it oil land, a small Middle Eastern nation, and you produce oil. If you want to sell it on the first, it has to go on the international market, available to all, and you can only trade in dollars. That means because of what the U.S. demands, you're accepting U.S. dollars for this, or else. Oh, we know what happens to countries that try to get off the dollar. When Gaddafi or Saddam Hussein said we want to trade elsewhere, euros or dinars, we saw what happened. Let's say you're a small nation called Silverland. You don't make a lot of oil, but you got a lot of silver. So you need that oil to get the silver. What do? Well, your country first must buy U.S. dollars. You need to trade your currency for U.S. dollars so that you can buy oil. So you go to the U.S. and you say, we're going to do 100 silver coins in exchange for, $2,000. That way we can buy oil. Random number, right? Then with the dollars, they buy oil. The U.S. then has Silverland currency that they can spend in Silverland and buy whatever they want. What did the U.S. do to get access to this currency? Nothing. They printed the money. There's inflation, interest rates. They just make it and say, okay, give us your currency and we'll let you have the oil. For Silverland to have money to actually get the oil, they must export something of value so that their economy is strong and you have something that is worth buying. Other people have that's worth buying. If your country produces nothing, the U.S. is going to say your currency is worth nothing. Why would we give you any dollars? You're going to have to give us everything you got. The United States has no such limitations. When the U.S. wants to buy oil, it just makes the money and buys the oil. Just because we can. We produce a lot of oil too, don't get me wrong. When the petrodollar ends, what happens now is Silverland trades in whatever they want. Probably Chinese yuan or a BRICS currency. The U.S. then says, hey, we need oil too. And the rest of the world says, what are you going to give us for it? And they're going to say U.S. dollars. And they're going to say, what does that get us? You don't export anything, and no one needs your dollars to buy anything. That means the U.S. economy will start to crumble. Mostly imports. Goods that are produced here will remain stable based on the local economies and how much people expect to get paid. The problem is, of the goods that we import, which is like basically everything now, are vegetables. Why are we importing food from China? What's going to happen then is China's not going to need any of our dollars to buy oil, and they've been dumping dollars. So that laptop you bought for $1,000, $10,000 easy. Imagine if right now you wanted a laptop, but they all were lowest price $6,000, $7,000 because they're all imported, and you've got to pay for the actual cost of that labor. You wouldn't be able to. Now, don't get me wrong, your cheeseburger is only going to be $30, but that laptop's going to be way more. When you're talking about what really gets impacted by this, it's imported goods. We can trade amongst ourselves however we want. We have a labor standard between each other. But the resulting impact at the end of the petrodollar means labor won't be cheaper overseas. We'll be forced to return to local labor. I believe Donald Trump's view is strengthen the U.S. economy so we have strong imports, strong standard economics in terms of unemployment rates are low and wage growth is high, inflation is low, things like that. That way, when the petrodollar falls, and it will, America will still have a footing for trade. Kamala Harris, Biden, the others, their view is no. Keep the guns pointed on them and threaten to annihilate the world unless they give us the oil. It will not end well for us. I'm going to wrap it up there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. on this channel. We'll be talking culture and women quitting their jobs to do OnlyFans. Smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share this video if you did enjoy it. Follow me on X at Timcast. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all in the next segment.